Welcome to the world of Pokemon. This is the first video of a series whose name I am uncertain of. The point of these videos is to retrospect and think about the legacy of a franchise. Aside from just my experience, I would like to examine what impact it had on gaming, other media, and in some cases the world at large. Which is definitely true for Pokemon, as more people probably know Pikachu than they know Jesus. Now I should mention beforehand that this is not a very deep analytical video, or one containing knowledge of the deepest lore, because my intelligence is at room temperature. This video is simply to retrospect and kind of celebrate the franchise, except for some of the lesser parts.
What the hell is this?
Well-named Satoshi Tajiri had a fanzine named Gamefreak, which wrote guides on how to beat certain arcade games, at one point even selling 10,000 copies. The will-be Pokemon designer Ken Sugimori found interest with his doujinshi and ended up becoming its illustrator. Feeling games were lacking in quality, they felt they should be making games instead. And so, in 1989, they formed the game development company Gamefreak. In 1990, Tajiri had conceived the idea of Pokemon after seeing a Game Boy, for it had the ability to communicate with another Game Boy. Basically, two Game Boys can be linked together for multiplayer action, but the idea could be used for more. As a child, for Tajiri, collecting bugs was a great hobby to the point where he would even be called Dr. Bug. The idea of Pokemon came from that. He wanted other kids to feel this joy of collecting insects within a video game. And with the Game Boy's link cable, they could trade them. He probably also came with this idea because of how more difficult the hobby has become, with the decline of insect life due to the urbanization of the neighborhoods. He pitched this to Nintendo, who had rejected his idea, a number of times even. But Shigeru Miyamoto saw promise within what Tajiri was pitching, convincing the company to let him develop this game, even mentoring him, though honestly for this last part I can't seem to find a reliable source, and I am too lazy to do more than 10 minutes of research, so here we are. It was Miyamoto's idea to have multiple versions of the games, each with its own unique Pokemon to encourage kids trading them. So if you want to blame someone for having to buy the games twice to get everything, you know who was at fault. For 6 long years, a team smaller than 10 people had been working on the Pokemon games. Ken Sugimori designing the original 151 Pokemon. Actually, there was meant to be 190 Pokemon. It would appear some of them were saved for the next generation and others, well, who knows. This Pokemon might have been planned though. In 1996, Pokemon Red and Green had made their debut in February. At the time, their sales were modest. However, there was a secret Pokemon amongst the 151. Koro announced a legendary offer of Mew to 20 lucky participants, of which there were over 70,000 of. Pokemon Red and Green ended up selling a combined number of over 10 million, and a new version with enhanced sound and graphics, Pokemon Blue, came out later, also selling about as well. It was also quite needed because, my god, this was made with less than 10 people on a budget so low Tajiri had no salary and it showed. But through sheer passion and love, they made it happen. Pokemon had quickly become a multi-million-dollar franchise. Or multi-billion-dollar, I don't know, I can't count. There was a threat of no localization, however, as the team's hands were now tied with Pokemon Stadium and the later sequels. But then, legend Satoru Iwata stepped in to make it happen, and it indeed made just as much of an impact worldwide. Its success made sense. It's a series gaming adults and kids alike could enjoy, with many creatures to catch and many teams to form. There are so many ways to play these games. Growing your Pokemon and evolving them into badass new forms is something no child would pass up. Feeling accomplished with growing your team and venturing in a whole new world should feel great on its own. But with it being on the Game Boy, there was a more social aspect to it as well. You can just come over and practice some other dumbass about how your Pokemon is clearly cooler than theirs. Or you know, just trade them. Speaking of trading, fucking Pokemon cards, man. These things were crazy popular. They had to be banned from schools because everyone will just bring them and keep trading. Its impact was huge and felt by confused parents in no time as it appeared everywhere. Of course, a successful franchise is not only indicated by its initial sales, but also by its multimedia format. As it had an anime series that was popular, trading card games like I said, And of course the animated movie Mewtwo Strikes Back, which would become a very successful animated film in Japan, but also would become Warner Bros.' most successful, I think, animated movie of all time, raking in $10 million on a Wednesday, also known as Poker Flu Day, as a bunch of children mysteriously had gotten sick for some reason. I unfortunately cannot find much about how it impacted Europe, despite coming from here, because I just can't find a single damn source. It came out in 1999, and I was a baby back then. Now, of course, amongst the many other products were made, there was a manga, and as I mentioned before, an animated show, which is still going strong. I can't help but think it definitely helped bolster its popularity. It was how I got into Pokemon anyway, which, you know, I guess it's kind of fair, because these games are not translated to my language at all. So the only way to really understand what the fuck a Pokemon is to watch the TV show, because there's no other way. There's just no other way. My memory of getting into Pokemon is rather vague. Perhaps I was 4 when I watched this movie, Pokemon Forever. But I might be remembering that because of the sheer coincidence. What got me more interested was, I think, a year later when I saw my first Pokemon episode. Of Ash and Pikachu fucking dying trying to save Larvitar. Certainly left an interesting first impression. A show like this was more on the rare side for me, as it would keep going with episodes being connected to one another. In due time of watching the anime when I was 7, I finally discovered that it was a gaming franchise all along. We didn't have commercials here, I don't think. This would mean that I started my Pokemon journey in Pokemon Emerald. But that's jumping way ahead. Let's take it back a bit. It is 1997. Pokemon Red and Blue have come out in the USA. They are based off the Pokemon Blue version in Japan. Now, in 1999, the Game Boy Color was a thing and Pokemon Yellow, based on the anime, came out. That will be the version I'm recording footage of for this video. This is what we call a sister game, a third game that combines elements of the two different versions, to create a definitive experience. Pokemon Yellow starts like any other Pokemon game. You finally turn 10, I think, and the local professor welcomes you to the wonderful world of the pocketed monster... pocket monsters. He doesn't know your name, which makes sense considering you never speak. So you can choose a name. Now, our protagonist for this gen is considered to be named Red. But since I am playing this game, I should pick something that really describes me. My own name is cliché now. Yeah, I think this fits me well. Now, you have a rival since childhood. Kind of a guy who thinks he's cooler than you and will try to belittle you in every way. His name is Gary Oak in the anime. Here he is considered blue. But Professor Oak seems to suffer from dementia, so we have to remind him his grandson's name. We can give a rival any name.
Dick fuck. Ah, yes, my grandson, Dick fuck.
What?
Yes, you must be prepared for the journey ahead.
It isn't.
You will meet great
No.
foes and
No.
many Pokemon.
But we are above such insulting names. As proper adults, we should not make a fool out of our childhood friend. So, I gave him the most mature name that I could think of. With that, our adventure is set in motion. Mom says goodbye, stating this as she takes parenting advice from the TV. I am very concerned. She doesn't even mention a channel. What kind of education did this woman have? Now, how you get your first Pokemon is different in every game. At some point you meet the professor and you get to choose your starter. Now, normally we would have to pick between a fire type, a water type, or a grass type. Essentially rock, paper, scissors, with your rival always picking Pokemon whose type is advantageous to ours. But in Yellow, Gary always gets an Eevee and you get the mascot of the series, Pikachu. Now, Pikachu was not always meant to be the mascot. Another candidate was Clefairy, as was the protagonist's Pokemon in the manga. But this didn't work out for many reasons. It's not animal-like, the sign didn't work as well, and it could also talk, which honestly didn't really work, which is why Pikachu never ever talked.
I always want.
God damn it. With Pikachu by our side, there is nothing that can stop us. Speaking of, we can name our Pokemon any name once obtaining it. To get closer to your Pokemon, you should give them a loving name. Gary challenges us for the first Pokemon battle, loses, and still thinks he's hot shit. This should introduce us to the core gameplay of Pokemon, its battle system. As Pokemon is an RPG, the gameplay is turn-based. Each turn, a player picks a command, and whoever has a higher speed stat moves first. Except when one has priority, like one who switches his Pokemon or uses a priority move like Quick Attack. Every Pokemon is unique in their base stats and typing. Especially in Gen 1 is typing and move pool the most important thing about playing Pokemon. Every Pokemon and every attacking move has a type, from elements like fire, water, electric, to being something like flying, fighting, psychic type. Certain types resist or negate attacks of specific moves, whilst others are weak to certain attacks. Figuring out what Pokemon you should add to your team to create a balanced team to make up for weaknesses some of your Pokemon have is important, as is knowing what attack to use on what Pokemon. This is key to winning the main game. And you may be wondering, wait, so if a Pokemon had many different types of moves and were faster, wouldn't it win the game very easily? Well, it does add usage to the Pokemon. There is another important mechanic, same type attack bonus. You see, Nidoking here can learn Flamethrower, which will deal a good number of damage against grass types. However, it may survive yet. To maximize damage, you should use a fire Pokemon with Flamethrower, as he is then given a knife to also stab the grass type with it. Stab is very important as it raises the move's attack power by 50%. This is what makes duo types useful, as it can mean having two different stab moves for coverage. Duo types have different things they are resistant and weak to according to their mixture. Well, normally. In Gen 1 this wasn't as well designed, for the second type was the one that determined what it would be weak to if there was a conflict. Except for in Stadium. Sometimes. Out of all of this, there are normal type Pokemon. They don't have any move that is super effective on others. However, this is often compensated with a wider move pool. Their only weakness? Fighting. Yeah, in a world with dragons, KFC, espers and ghosts, what they fear the most is a punch to the face. Makes sense, I guess. When your Pokemon HP reaches 0, they do not die. Rather, they faint. This was part of Taijiri's idea that the game shouldn't be as violent like other games. Okay, whatever you say, buddy. From the start of our adventure, we deliver a parcel to Professor Oak. We get the Pokédex, a device to gather data of all Pokémon we catch. With data, the Pokédex will give us some lore, and some of these entries are interesting. Sometimes it will appear Gamefreak hates children. Honestly, I have the theory that these are false. I mean, come on, Oak is just fucking with us, whilst fucking with your mom. They wrote this data themselves to scare you. Yeah, sure, Dusclops is connected to hell with an antenna. Okay, Professor, I believe you. Oak wants us to go on a quest to catch them all to gather data for him. But this ended up being more of a side quest. And as far as fan theory goes, it is most likely he gave us such a long quest for time with your mother. I heard it was quite a banger. Though let's be honest here, with how Oak can't even remember his grandson's name, I am pretty sure it is Mom banging him. In fact, I don't even think he knows what's going on. Anyway, we venture forward. We find a new Pokemon and the dumbest NPCs you'll ever encounter, either giving us some rumor, basic text, or telling us how to play the game. But in routes, forests and caves you come across other trainers. They stand there, waiting for you to make eye contact, instilling that primal fear of autistic children, making you unable to move, and then they will challenge you to a Poke battle. No matter the circumstances, no matter the area, these guys, from children to adults, are ruthless, as they do not care how you feel. They must have this fight with you. You can be at death's doorstep after walking for hours through a dark cave with your half-fainted and poisoned party. They see you limp with your half-dead Pokemon, and instead of asking if you're alright, taking you to a Pokemon Center, or healing your Pokemon before a fight like a normal person, these assholes would prefer to feint the rest of your team, knock you out and steal your lunch money. It is lucky that most of these trainers are not very smart. In fact, some of them are dumb. Trainers come in many types, from schoolboys to beauties to bikers to jugglers. You can kind of guess what Pokemon they have based on their type. Hikers often use rock, ground and occasionally fighting types. Cool trainers often use rarer and stronger Pokemon, and bug catchers use insect Pokemon, which makes them fucking stupid. Who uses insect Pokemon? I mean, seriously. Kind of ironic considering the origins of this game. There is one thing noticeable about these trainers. Some of them refuse, absolutely will not evolve their Pokemon, making them weaker. Seriously, why? Either way, we exit out of Viridian Forest and enter Pewter Town. This place is important because this is where we can take our first gym challenge, giving us a clearer goal in this game. Now, there was a gym back in Viridian, but it is closed at the time, so we can just ignore that one. Every region has their own Pokemon League. Now, it is different how it works in the anime, but in the games you can enter the league after acquiring 8 gym badges. In the games there exists a champion of the region, and to get to him you have to beat the Elite 4 at the Pokemon League, with the sole purpose of becoming the new champion. Of course, this would mean defeating 8 gym leaders spread throughout the region, each specializing in a type of Pokemon. And so, our real quest starts. It is a story of becoming the best, like no one ever was. Now, these gym leaders do have some of the stronger Pokemon, especially later on. However, because they focus on one type, they can be defeated by having the right Pokemon on your team. Our first gym leader is Brock. He has rock types. But said rock types are also part ground, making Pikachu's electric attacks worthless. Most Pokemon you can catch barely damage them. If you had chosen Charmander in the original games, you would also have this problem. This is where we learn problem solving. We need a new mon and a strategy. So I caught this monkey and made it clear that I don't know the difference between primate species. Fighting types are strong against rock types for some reason. So it is the only thing in the area that can save us. To get to a gym leader we have to fight his trainers and solve its puzzles. You would expect trainers to also have some type of Pokemon, but this guy here has a ground type and the Durkalus shows up in a poison gym with a Hypno, a psychic type, who is a poison type killer. Either way, after defeating a gym leader you get a badge. A move TM which you can teach to a compatible Pokemon, which in Gen 1 usually sucks. Traded Pokemon of higher levels will now listen to us, and we sometimes get allowed to use HM moves. More on that later. Since this tree is in the way, we have no choice but to enter our first dungeon, Mount Moon. As any other RPG, there are dungeons in this one too. Naturally, being on an older system means they are pretty basic and in some cases very annoying. Gen 1 surely has some of the worst dungeons, and before anyone wants to point at Gen 8, I have to say, you can't have worse dungeons if there are no dungeons. Anyway, the reason why people often hate caves is because you tend to encounter this little creature here. You see, he is kind of weak, but he shows up every time. I swear, at some point I question whether or not there should be a Zubat extinction organization. I swear, every 5 seconds you find one. Oh well, who dis? So we finally meet Team Rocket. Every region has a team of criminals, all with their own goals, albeit their ones are just kind of there to be evil. Despite that, their brains are about as smooth as a koala's, often using the weakest Pokemon. Team Rocket regularly uses poison types which have lesser attacks in Gen 1. They also always use a god damn it, not more Zubats! I am fucking dumb! I don't want to see another fucking Zubat! Since we have poison Pokemon on our minds, let's talk about status ailments. You see, just like in other RPGs, you may get hit by a certain status effect. Poison making you lose HP, sleep making you either never wake up again, or wake up right after just to waste your opponent's turn. Burn makes you lose HP but also halves your physical attack stat. Freeze turns you into a block of ice, a rare status ailment but a damaging one nonetheless. Paralysis gives you a negative priority and you may be unable to move in a turn. There is also a secret ailment called Toxic, a more advanced poison that gives up a larger number of HP every turn, ensuring that even if you use healing items you'll die eventually. Alongside this are some other effects that aren't really considered the same, like Confusion or Leech Seed. These ailments vanish when you switch out, but man, can Confusion be super annoying. When you use it, the opponent snaps out of it the next turn, but of course, when you get it, you just keep hitting yourself. Leech Seed drains the health of the affected, bringing more HP back to the user. In Gen 1 there was a glitch, where the damage increased alongside Toxic, making this a deadly strategy. And then, there is the worst mechanic in Generation 1, Bind. You see, there are moves that stops you from moving. Together with Paralysis, it almost ensures you slowly die as this keeps getting spammed and takes little HP out of you, making you wait until he misses you and you kill him, or you'll have to make a sandwich as you wait for the inevitable. At least I won't have to deal with this in later games because man, this is not only annoying but also a huge waste of time. Finally reaching the end of this cave, we come across some fossils. Pokemon had gone extinct in the process of time, and just like in real life, their remains are rarely found across the world. However, someone had found a way to birth Pokemon from said fossils, ensuring that these Pokemon are extinct in name only. It kind of ruins the mystique of it if you ask me, but whatever. This nerd doesn't want us to touch these fossils, so he challenges us with a poison type. Probably a joke about toxic nerds here somewhere, real classy Gamefreak. We get to pick one fossil and move on to Cerulean. Now here we can find 2 of the 3 starter Pokemon we normally would have to choose in the other games. I cannot think of another Pokemon game that lets you have all 3 of the starters, which is enough reason to play Yellow version if you want to go back to Gen 1. This also introduces us to the happiness stat. You see, by walking around a lot with your Pokemon, or by killing a bunch of other Pokemon, your Pokemon gains happiness. Now happiness is a hidden stat that you can't really see for yourself, but an NPC might be able to tell for you. Now in Pokemon Yellow you can tell if your Pikachu is happy or not based on how he emotes. There are 2 specific moves for this stat. One is Return, which powers up the higher your friendship stat is, and Frustration, which powers up the lower your friendship stat is. Now to get one of these starters, your Pikachu needs to be super happy. Now luckily in Gen 1 and 2, there's an extra mechanic for happiness. You simply buy a bunch of fucking potions and give them to Pikachu, eventually you'll be happy. I don't know why, but apparently Pokemon in yellow just love medicine. Yes, give me those drugs! On this Nugget Bridge, we experience our first evolution. Evolving your Pokemon is one of the most satisfying features, making you really feel your team is growing as you get stronger. They go from tiny forms to big badass monsters. Now most evolve through leveling up, but others have different conditions. Most commonly an item to help them evolve, or by trading. Trade evolutions are often disliked because you needed someone else to evolve them, and then hope they return said Pokemon to you. Now Game Boys can only do this through link cable, and in this classroom I will show you the amount of kids that have a link cable. Yeah. So basically, some dumbass might just buy another Game Boy, another game, and a link cable. That dumbass would be me. But especially if you go back in these older games digitally, these trade evolutions are even more obnoxious, because it can be very difficult to have any way to trade them with. Unfortunate considering trading Pokemon was part of the reason it exists. There are also in-game trades you can do, some leading you to otherwise uncatchable months. And then you have fucking scammers. Stone evolutions are only annoying if there are a limited amount of them, but on Mount Moon we found a Moonstone, so we can already have a fully evolved Pokemon on our team, making some of the early challenges a complete joke. With Machet here, everyone falls like dominoes, whilst he almost takes no damage. You also meet Gary, who shows up in some of the most unexpected places, even within the evil layer of the Mafia. Why? He challenges us, we beat him again. He tells us how many Pokemon he has caught by now and brags about being shown some by the creator of the Pokemon PC. You see, with the limit of 6 Pokemon to carry, some of your Pokemon gets put inside a box. The anime shows it as basically a natural field owned by the professor, where your Pokemon can just kind of chill. The creator of this PC was Bill. We enter his house and he turned himself into a Clefairy. Either Gary waited for us on the bridge for days, or you left this guy to his fate. What a dick. We restore him back to normal and he tells us he wants to see a Pokemon, but we got better things to do. Someone got robbed. Oh, the humanity. They stole a move TM to dig holes. Okay. Team Rocket is surely behind it, while the police is searching the house. Let's find this team. Guys. He's in the fucking backyard. What are you doing? And as such, it is quite clear that somehow the police force has an even lower IQ than a koala. Fine, I'll get Dick back for you. Here you go. Why are you giving up? Well, we head to Vermilion City. We enter the seaport. We got a ticket to SS Anne, which hopefully doesn't sink like in the anime. Here we get our first hidden move, Cut. You see, there are obstacles in places in this game we can only access by using HM moves. These things cannot be removed, so it usually is a pain to give it to one of your team members. Because those 4 slots are reserved for something better, unless it is Fly or Surf that can deal some actual good damage. So instead of wasting our team's movesets, we must catch a Pokemon to do the work for us. Alright, fine, there, better? But I had caught the wrong Pokemon, as this red cannot cut. We have this Diglett do the cutting for us. Yes, makes sense to me. This gym is blocked by a tree because you are expected to carry an axe around in the city, I suppose. Then we get to my favorite gym puzzle. Since this is a simple time, these puzzles are very simple, but often pretty bad. This puzzle is just constantly random and the second switches every time. Blaine's puzzle can be just ignored by fighting everyone instead. And Sabrina reminds me of why I hate RPG teleporters. Healthy Surge, a true American, appears here telling us about being a veteran of the war. I thought this was just localization, only to find out that in Japanese he is even more American. He even curses goddamn.
Goddamn!
So we know the regions are based off of real places, for the longest time those being from Japan. But later we get to travel to America, France, Hawaii and Britain. But I can hardly recall any other games actually using the names of real world countries. Perhaps something to look into. Anyway, this dumbass has only 1 Pokemon, and with my ground type he now has no Pokemon. At this point, level hardly matters. Now we have to head south, but a fat fuck is blocking the way, so we have to go through the Rock Tunnel. Everyone hates Rock Tunnel because it's too dank. Every game has a dark cave, but at least you can see some things in later gens. Here you really want to use Flash to see the way. Though I wonder how this works, because apparently trainers can and cannot see you. Oh, what could we possibly do in these dark caves? After going through Zubats and 50 trainers, we finally arrive in Lavender Town. And this music is... You know, I have heard stories of someone killing themselves because this music is kind of mad. You can immediately tell something is off here, and you soon learn this is a Pokemon graveyard town. Pokemon can indeed die. Now I wonder how. I fucking cooked them, drowned them, shocked them, poisoned them, insulted their mom, and even shot a nuke level beam into their face, and none of them ever died. I struggle to know how a Pokemon dies, but maybe we should just leave it at that. This is where we can catch the elusive ghost Pokemon. All 3 of them! Actually just one evolution line, and their attacks are physical. Besides this one being a special attacker. So while we are here, let us talk about a certain stat. It's the special stat. You see, both special attack and defense were only 1 stat in Gen 1. What does this mean? This means that something with a high special stat won't fucking die. And also will murder you even without stabbing you. Now, special and physical moves are determined by the type of move in Gens 1 through 3. So that means that in order for Gengar to do a special attack, he cannot fully utilize either of his stab moves. Now this sucks because those ghost Pokemon are the only thing that can actually stop these godly psychic types. Psychic types have nothing resisting their moves, always have a high special stat, and the only thing that can damage them with super effect would be this ghost type, who is also a poison type, making it weak to psychic. It's either that or a bug type, and yeah, well, I already told you what I think of bug types. This makes psychic types broken. Well, seeing as a ghost is stopping us, we can only head elsewhere. In this nice city of Celadon, we can do something fun for kids of all ages. Gambling! You can get a coin case from this one guy at the bar who gave up on everything, and now you too can spin the slot machine. For gambling enough, you can get some awesome Pokemon like Dratini. Where's Dratini at? You can also get some TMs. Pretty useful, because every TM only has 1 usage. Now, you don't have to gamble. Don't put up with this if you're rich. Just buy coins instead. Fuck gambling. In this city there is also the traditional big fucking store. Here you can find all the items you'll ever need. Usually some good TMs, but not in a game where Watergon is a TM. Even more awesome is the ability to buy evolution stones. Not all of them, but this way you can evolve plenty of your team. In this city you can also find an Eevee, a Pokemon that has many different evolution forms. It's also freaking cute. This casino is owned by the Yakuza. No, wait, it's owned by none other than Team Rocket. Kind of obvious when one random quant stands in front of a poster and Outfit tells us about it. Man, these guys are incompetent. No, seriously, can they get even dumber? I dropped the key! Well, I mean, just go pick it up. Oh no, I dropped the key! But you'll be able to pick it up faster than I can snatch it. Just pick it up. Oh no, I can't find it anywhere. It's, I just don't see it. I just dropped it. Dude, it's right next to you. Just fucking grab it. Oh no, I guess it is lost forever. I'll never find it again. What a shame. You know what? Never mind. I'll just get it. You know, you have a nice day. It is here we meet the Italian mob boss, Giovanni. A simple, straightforward villain with his only goal being world domination. As Team Rocket, they steal Pokemon to make the strongest army to overthrow the world. Now, if they only just caught them in the bushes and trained them hard like a normal person, they'd have more to offer than a Zubat. All team leaders have goals of their own, and unlike their lackeys, tend to have a properly trained Pokemon team, often including rare Pokemon. Now, even then, we have the wisdom of a 10-year-old, so they are no match. After defeating Giovanni, we get the Sylph Scope, which allows us to see ghosts for what they really are. A Marowak, who apparently got murdered by Team Rocket. With electric batons. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Lightning doesn't affect ground types. What the fuck? Beyond here is Team Rocket. They are holding this old man hostage, who apparently is a scientist. I don't actually don't remember. I think they gave him more importance in the Origins anime, but here he's just there to calm the souls of Killbone's mom, who's Marowak, which we just killed again. We decide to go to the next town. Except the next town, there's a guard there that's like, no, wait, but I'm thirsty. Yeah, we can't let you through. The road is unfinished. They say the road is unfinished, but the moment we give him a drink, he lets us through and there's no unfinished road at all. He's fucking lying. Allowing us to enter Saffron City, which had been taken by Team Rocket. What are the police doing? Anyway, within the corporation building Team Rocket has conquered, we are met with a mechanic that is always reused. The Spin of Irritation! Now in later games it at least doesn't take so long, but here we fight Giovanni again, forcing him to escape with his helicopter. As a reward, we get the Master Ball, a ball that can catch any Pokemon with a 100% capture rate. We can now face off against the local gym leader, but we also have the choice to get elsewhere, a rare occurrence in Pokemon where you can choose which gym leader to fight first. We can get a bike, if we listen to this guy talk about his Rapidash. After escaping the biker gang, we get to Fuchsia City. This place is home to the Pokemon Safari. Now in the anime, a Pokemon Safari is a place where you are not allowed to catch any Pokemon. But in the games, it's the opposite. You get 30 balls, bait and rocks. And only with that are you allowed to catch all of these Pokemon. Here you can find very rare Pokemon, unfindable elsewhere. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's tackle these gym leaders. The gym leaders have a huge level spike compared to other trainers and your own, but they probably have no EVs. Effort values. For every Pokemon you defeat you get an EV, increasing one of your stats. In the first 2 gens, every stat can be maxed out with 252 EVs. This makes trained Pokemon stronger than simply higher level COD Pokemon. On the other hand, even if these guys did their EV training, it wouldn't have mattered, because with even broken psychic types, they are just stupid. One other stretch you could utilize is status moves. You see, there are also moves that change the stats of battling Pokemon. Certain moves lower stats, whereas others raises them. Now, I could not read English when I was playing Pokemon, so I never understood these moves and thought they just did nothing. Your opponents often change stats, but they don't really do anything to take advantage of the stat changes. The most annoying one, and the one that gets banned more often in competitive play, are moves that changes accuracy and evasion, because having everything miss all the time is a very cheap tactic. Even amongst kids who battle each other for fun would clearly state to each other not to use evasion moves, as it makes the games not fun. So with that done, we can use Surf, which we get from some hidden house in the Safari. We can go over water and find some new Pokemon. We can also get a fishing rod from some guy and get water Pokemon that way. We also encounter more fishermen, of which every game is always that one guy with a team of 6 Magikarp. They can only use Splash, a move that actually does nothing. We land onto Cinnabar Island to go through some lore of an experiment gone away. This mansion has the worst color scheme, I swear. We win our 7th gym badge, and thus there was only one left. However, we know of no other gym than the one in Viridian, but it was closed. Coming back, however, we find out that the gym leader had returned, and coming inside we see the first red flag. Oh no, not these again! In a simple plot twist, Giovanni was the last gym leader, making one more final climactic fight against the mob boss, ending Team Rocket forever. Not really though. I mean, he stood no chance. His Pokemon were ground types, and some of them were 4 times weak to grass and water types, so this was actually easier. With all 8 gym badges, it had finally become time to go to the Pokemon League. It was a hard and long journey, but we finally enter the victory road. Every game has one, and it is basically a test of how much you can stand leaving party members away from XP, as you have to use HMs to get through. After this, almost every victory road is blocked by the final HM, Waterfall, but that's later. Here we need strength and move boulders to solve puzzles. Finally, at the end of Victory Road, we start to grind. These Elite 4 members have crazy strong Pokemon, and you have to fight 4 of them in a row. After the great grind of Destiny, we are finally ready to enter the final battles. We meet former champion Lance, who specializes in the ever so rare Dragon-type Pokemon. And just like Ghost types, there is only one evolution line. That's it. Dragon types resist the 4 common elements. Most Dragon types have crazy stats. Now, they do not really get a stab move in Gen 1, because the only Dragon type move is Twister, which does the set amount of damage. So it's not useful, but they don't need a knife. He's a fucking dragon. He just ass blasts you. He doesn't care. Dragonite is buffed. And many following Dragon types are as well, a lot of them being titled pseudo-legendaries, for their frequently high stats. Their only weakness is Ice and Dragon. Since Dragons and Flying types are both weak to Ice, it only takes a simple Blizzard to kill him. And thus, the time had come to face the champion. I wonder who such a master trainer could be. Someone who knows all Pokemon, someone who has experienced battle after battle, one with the wisdom of the ages as an adult at the top of the world. You again? How did you even get here? I clapped your ass cheeks 20 minutes ago. So, Gary had already beaten the champion before us. So now all we have to do is face him. But we already know his team layout, and unlike the specialists, I have more Pokemon to use in this fight, so yeah. Hey, at least his team is pretty freaking good. And with that, a good rivalry comes to an end. Oak comes to congratulate us and scolds Gary for losing, even though I would have been proud of the simple fact that he made it this far. We finally reach the Hall of Fame, where our Pokemon will be recorded as legends. Forever. And then we cut to the credits. At this point, it is pretty clear what made this game so big. Alongside the fact that the amount of playthroughs you can have without them feeling the same because of all the different creatures you can catch and race, there is this sense of adventure to become the best. This can be quite a thrilling feeling when you're young. Heck, even when you're older, it is a nice feeling to set out to become better than anyone else. There are plenty of reasons to like Pokemon, and Gen 1 doesn't even have all of them. Making your own team, thinking of strategies and learning more, seeing your team grow stronger and stronger, the Pokemon themselves ranging from cute, cool, ugly and funny looking. This feeling of traveling around with them is what makes it all so fun. Now when it comes to story, the games fall flat on their faces, but I think that's fine. Pokemon is similar to older RPGs, where the story is more what you make of your travels, something that some who like to use their creativity might enjoy. I realize that is not for everyone, but I think it's a strength Pokemon should play more into. Even without a story, there's still plenty of lore to go around. Now, Gen 1 may not have the deepest lore, there are still a few interesting moments and mysteries, Leo being one of them. It even saved the entire franchise. How about this ghost you find out is actually the Marowak who lost her life protecting her son from Team Rocket. With the Pokeflute, you wake up this giant Pokemon you can either catch or defeat to go to a different route. These little tidbits may be simple, but add flavor to the overall adventure. But that is not all. There is one more thing left to do. There are Pokemon that have reached legend status. Are they real or just a myth? Well, Stadium sure makes you think not. These Pokemon are quite a bit more powerful than your average one, and you can only catch one per game. These are found in specific hard to reach locations, or just right next to this guy in the Victory Road. In Gen 1 there are only a handful of them, but they are the birds Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres. Articuno you find in an ice cave? Wait, yeah, that's better. Zapdos is in an abandoned power plant, and Moltres, dude, why aren't you trying to catch him? He's right next to you. Whatever. They are hard to catch, their capture rate only being 3%. But after a while of trying, you will be able to get them. And then not use them, because that is cheating. Oh, shut up. I spend a lot of time getting them, I'm using them. There is a stigma against using legendaries, and it makes sense. They are more powerful than most Pokemon. However, you should soon realize that there are tiers between legendaries, and the birds are on the lower end. In competitive play, they are totally fair to use, especially since you can kill these two with a fucking rock. But we are not done yet. There is one more place we can surf to in Cerulean City. Inside this cave exists a Pokemon no one has ever heard of. Now, if you remember the Pokemention, you might have read some reports of some guys finding a DNA string of Mew. They had created the ultimate Pokemon, and it had been said that Mew was the original Pokemon. What a fucking lie that was. But the strength of this scientifically made Pokemon is no fable. The Pokemon was made too powerful for scientists to handle, too intelligent to be caught by Team Rocket. Its power is unmatched. No such power should exist, yet here he is. The legendary clone of Mew, originally named Mewtwo. This guy has the highest stats in the game. Being a psychic type already makes him broken by default. It has a wide move pool to destroy anyone else, even without stabbing them. And catching will be hard too, for it can simply recover all of its HP. It will take much planning, willpower and guts to overcome, but together with my Pokemon, we can... Oh. Right, yeah. Well, this Master Ball really does catch every Pokemon. Damn, even this experiment was no match. You may even be able to catch God with this. Oh no, that would be silly. All joking aside, there is a reason Mewtwo is so popular, aside from it being uber powerful. This movie helped a lot to it as well. The movie I think still holds up, especially the Japanese version. Apparently the Japanese version made Mewtwo in a morally complex character, questioning whether or not it deserves to exist, for it is artificially created. The themes of this movie are about existentialism. This is also seen within Mewtwo, cloning Pokemon to be the perfect versions of them, to further prove their existence to be more worthy. Now apparently the movie had been toned down in America, saying that kids are just too fucking dumb to understand any of that. Also, we cannot have moral relativism to make Mewtwo an obvious villain. Like, what is this shit? I am trying to think kids are only dumb because we don't even slightly challenge them intellectually. Either way, I feel this was a silly attempt. Either that, or I am some kind of prodigy. I think most already understood some of these concepts from just watching this film. I mean, wouldn't you think about it? Regardless, Mewtwo is artificially made. The result is still the same. Just like the cloning and the fighting that breaks out. These weren't even normal fights anymore, as the Pokemon are fighting for what felt like their lives. Mew tries to intervene, fiercely fighting Mewtwo. To stop their clash, Ash jumps between the two, fucking dying! This does stop the fight. In a heartfelt moment, with the Pokemon cloned or otherwise sharing the same feelings, their tears revive Ash, changing Mewtwo's mind, saying this quote:
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
Now, this quote may mean many things to different people, but it is something I see people quote often, showing its importance. I think especially after reading what the Japanese version was like, Mewtwo finally realized that it doesn't matter how he was made, that his life, like every other, has value. Aside from the main games, spin-offs were made as well, but I kind of want to save them for a bit later. Next to working on Stadium, Gamefreak had their hands full with the next generation of Pokemon. If one were to ask what took them so long, perhaps it is because they were working on multiple projects. That, and there was a problem with space limitation, to which absolute legend Satoru Iwata compressed the data and—
Objection!
Nani? What is going on? Satoru Iwata in fact did not compress data for the next generation of Pokemon. Doyukoto? Satoru Iwata did indeed write a new compression algorithm, but this actually cost space. It was done to increase the speed of decompression. Wait, what's the difference? You fool! He didn't compress the game, he merely created the tools! Nice argument. Now why don't you back it up with a source? I've got this Reddit post right here. Well, what does the judge have to say? Too long, didn't read. Either way, with new tools at hand, the developers were able to not only have us travel to a new region, but we can even go back to Kanto. With the game done, during 1999, in Japan, Pokemon Gold and Silver came out, throwing us into a whole new world to live in. While Gen 1 was a good begin, as someone who was born a little later, it feels as something a bit unfinished, like something was missing. Of course, this game has aged quite a bit. I found myself having fun, but that doesn't negate the fact that the battle system had major issues. The game itself was pretty buggy, and for personal reasons, I think the designs can be a little bit too basic. I mean, Seal's just a fucking seal. I think the region is also kinda like vanilla, I guess you could say. Even in remakes, I think the Kanto region is a little bit basic. Now, doing this, I realize why it is that way. With the next generation, we now have upgraded to the Game Boy Color, with the magnificent addition of colors. This game has aged slightly better. The footage I recorded is from its sister game, Pokemon Crystal, which has some neat enhancements, such as animated sprites. Now, I am only going to talk about what is new here, because if we were to cover every game in depth, I'd be here for a few years. Now, in the region of Johto, we start as trainer Ethan, okay. However, we don't just simply have Ethan over here. No, we are playing Pokemon Crystal after all. And in Pokemon Crystal, they added a absolutely revolutionary new feature. A female protagonist. You can now choose to either be a boy or a girl. Now, perhaps Gamefreak saw that perhaps maybe a game with a bunch of cute little animals you can catch in it would also be quite interesting to a different audience. So, to please the female audience, to give them some representation, they decided to, add the option of a female character. Yes, I totally think that is the reason. I am pretty certain there can be no other reason as to why they could potentially add a female character. No, not at all. It's not like this community is known for drawing very illicit pictures of certain characters or anything like that. No, that's ridiculous. That's just silly. Why would you think that? Why would you assume malice on the developers' part as well? Like, what do you mean? No, impossible. Impossible. That's crazy. We get our Pokemon from Professor Elm, so we can venture out and get a mystery egg. Now, don't worry. It's unlikely he is banging your mom, because nerds don't get pussy. Alright, already out on adventure, let's talk about the updated battle system. Look, the special stat has been split! Finally! This alone helped in balancing. Of course, some became worse because of having more special attack and almost no special defense, but tanky Pokemon can be much better now, having defense for both special and physical attacks. Another addition is the holding of items. A Pokemon can now hold an item, so that item can have numerous effects, especially in late game. A berry to heal your HP, leftovers to constantly heal HP every turn, items that boost types of moves, or an item that lowers the accuracy of the opponent. There even is an item to increase money drops. Especially when more items come, this adds more flavor to the battle system, specifically when fighting your friends. When it comes to new moves, we now have weather effects. Rain boosts water attacks, weakens fire attacks and gives thunder at 100% accuracy. The sun does the reverse with the two types and also gives Solar Beam no charge time, making this a great effect for grass Pokemon as well. Sandstorm is a bit more simple, it just damages everything that is not a rock, ground or steel type. Things like bites don't make you stop watching your HP deplete while you cook a steak anymore. For those annoying Pokemon that keep switching out, Pursuit is a move that damages them as they switch. There are some good bug type moves now, like Mega Horn. To counteract the Psychic Menace, 2 new types have been made. The Steel types focusing more on defense, they resist many different attacks and often have high defensive stats. The second type, the Evil type or Aku type, wait, in English it's just Dark type, can't have those kids think Pokemon are evil by nature, but doesn't Dark type make more sense anyway? Dark types are immune to Psychic attacks, making them the ultimate counter to both Psychic and Ghost type. But they are afraid of fighting types, though, for some reason. With all of these changes, the game was a bit more balanced, and still feels fine going back to. That doesn't mean there weren't any problems in competitive. Curse setuppers, curse setuppers, curse setuppers, curse setuppers. Hey, remember that fat fuck on the bridge in the last game? Yeah, well, he had decided that bullying is wrong. By cursing at you with seething rage, he will show you the power of being morbidly obese by being unable to fucking die. Yo, you almost killed him and got him toxic? Rest. You know what, while you are here you can take a nuclear beam to the face, fuck you. There is no safari in this game, it is replaced with the bug catching contest, and to win it you have to catch the best bug Pokemon or something like that. But its points are fucking random. However, you can get Scyther here, which is kinda worth it, considering he also evolves into Scizor. You can also headbutt trees for rare Pokemon like Heracross, who has a base attack stat of 130, wrecking every Pokemon early game. After battling the cult of Bellsprout enjoyers and beating the local gym leader, who is cheating by the way, he's not the only one. Look at Lance, he shouldn't have a Dragonite, what the fuck? We are given the Mystery Egg. This introduces us to another new staple. When we head over to Goldenrod, just before we enter the city, we find a Pokemon daycare. These old folks allow 2 Pokemon in to take care of for you. They gain XP as you move around, making it pretty useful when your Pokemon doesn't have an attacking move yet. But that isn't the important aspect. This is how you breed Pokemon. 2 compatible Pokemon can make an egg. If you walk around with that egg enough, it hatches. Now, usually you just use a Ditto because it is a slot and doesn't discriminate. After successful Pokemon trafficking, you can breed even better Pokemon. But that is not all, there are also egg moves. By breeding 2 specific Pokemon, there's a chance your Pokemon learns a move it cannot otherwise learn. But that is not really the reason why a competitive team is bred. To make every Pokemon a bit more unique, the devs had put in IVs. What are IVs, you ask? A fucking mistake. Individual values, basically every Pokemon you catch have unique numbers to each stat increasing it. These cannot be changed, so what does that mean? This means that we have an entire fandom that forced Dittos to mate and make hundreds of babies just to get the perfect IVs and throw the rest into nature so they can get eaten by a bear or some shit. In this game, I might understand the point. EVs can be distributed over all stats, so they wanted something to make every Pokemon special. But instead, now we have a giant fucking wall in order to get into competitive. Because everyone will have perfect IVs, so you are just going to pace back and forth, hoping your egg isn't off by 1 IV. What delightful gameplay! In later games there are many other ways Pokemon are unique in, so to me, IVs are just archaic things that aren't needed. Unfortunately, of all mechanics they decide to get rid of, they never get rid of the one we don't actually need. Oh, but some enjoy it. Some like pacing back and forth for 40 hours just to breed 1 perfect Pokemon. There is satisfaction in breeding your own team, said by someone who clearly has the time for it. So you should too. But that's the thing, I don't. I've got better things to do. How is it fun? You literally are only moving back and forth. Ah yes, satisfying. It's not a challenge, it's a waste of time. Finally, I'm done breeding my perfect team. Now I can join the official Pokemon tournament. What the fuck is a DS? Besides the usual gym leaders, Rifle, Hentai and the returning Team Rocket, who are on a shoestring budget by the way, we now also have to deal with 2% per plot. Starting from here, legendary Pokemon are on the cover, some legends surround the Pokemon of the region and in some way we are going to meet them. The plot in every other game now revolves around you meeting this legend at some point. It usually is summoned after obtaining an item and coming there with special people, or some gangsters trying to revive a death god, you know, normal things. Of course, Gen 2 had limited technology, but as games go on, we get more elegant introductions leading a legendary hunt. Oh yes, this will be epic.
The enemy ascended beyond your control. Or was that all your intention? They have managed to demolish whatever we make, but you're failing to comprehend. If they can, they will easily put you home while you're blundered by your digression. I have gotten to the point where I'm just too afraid that you're going to meet your end. This is my message to my master. This is a fight you cannot win. But if I should die before you continue, you shall have heard my final dying roar.
Hey guys, look at that, the champion is actually doing something. We get to the Lake of Rage and find a red Gyarados? This introduces us to some new power we have received with color technology! Shinies! These are Pokemon that are colored different. Sometimes. At times they even look far worse than the original color scheme. A shiny is rare, which is what makes it valuable. There's only a 1 out of 8,192 chance to find one. No, the red Gyarados doesn't count, he is scripted. I myself only got one shiny using the farm in X and Y. Aside from that, I only ever found one shiny, and it was a, oh goddammit, not the bats again! We meet the champion, Lance the Dragon Tamer. He just blasts into a secret rocket hideout after figuring out they are using radio waves to force Magikarp to evolve into enraged Gyarados. Gyarados? We find out their plan is to take over Goldenrod City to contact Giovanni to reassemble Team Rocket. Now in the remake, through the Celebi event, it takes us back in time to see our rivals speak to him. After defeating Giovanni in a different timeline, he commits unself-preservation. With us beating the Rocket Executives who were faceless in the original game, Team Rocket is done, I think. We bring medicine from across waters to this Pokefowl named Jaspin to cure a Thunder Sheep so he can continue his slave labor lighting the lighthouse. We find some legendary dogs making them escape from the burning tower. They were said to be made by the legendary bird Ho-Oh. Whereas the bird trio back in Kanto were connected to the seabird Lugia. We fight the junior dragon tamer, Claire, at the final gym, but she can't accept defeat and tells us to take a trial at the Dragon's Den, which she never cleared. And it is 3 questions. Claire, how do you even? Throughout this adventure, we get one character who has character development, Silver. He only believes in strong Pokemon and it takes us 6 times beating him to make him think that he was perhaps mistaken, constantly calling us weak with nothing to show for it. But after a while, he starts to realize he might be wrong. He works on becoming the strongest trainer, but also learns to treat his Pokemon with love, rather than forcing them to be strong. Eventually, his Golbat evolves into the new Crobat, who only evolves if his friendship is maxed. A subtle detail, but a showing of his growth. We defeat Elite 4 and the champion, and the rest is history. Or was it? Gen 2, and more so its remakes, has one of the best post-games in the entire series. When you thought it was done, there is a whole nother region to explore. We can now go to Kanto and get the gym badges there. Let's talk about the level curve now. This is one of the weaker points of Gen 2. You get some freedom of travel, but because of that a lot of trainers have low level Pokemon, giving your Pokemon a lot less XP. This can already be annoying once you have to face the Elite 4, but here it is worse. You fight level 30 trainers throughout the region when yours are well in their 40s, and once you face your old rival, Blue, he suddenly shows up with level 58 Pokemon. The highest ones in previous gyms weren't even 50. There's a lot of grinding required just to finish the final challenge, and that can be quite tiring. I personally wouldn't do this without an emulator where I can speed things up. Anyway, you now have gym badges of both regions, your level is far above the Elite Fours, and you have bested lands to become the champion. Surely you are the strongest, right? No, there's still one opponent we have to face. Oak allows you to go to Mount Silver, somehow. And up the snowy mountain, we have our final opponent, one we know all too well. Of course, we already became champion of Kanto, so our final opponent is a true champion. Red. His highest Pokemon being level 80, granted that is just Pikachu, but his whole team is cracked, making this one of the hardest challenges in the game. However, at this point, many Pokemon are available to you, and you can train as much as you want. In this final battle, you will truly be the best, even overcoming yourself. We're done, right? Huh? Oh, I forgot. Right, legendary hunting. In the remakes there is a lot more, but this game introduces to us roaming legendaries. Everyone hates these. Finding them is already annoying, but they immediately run away. You need to use Mean Look or other such moves to make them stay, but those moves are not likely to be on your Pokemon at a high level because they tend to be useless. All the damage you do stays, but that is the only thing you can take advantage of. The Master Ball is usually reserved for one of them. Unfortunately, every game almost always has more than one roaming legendary. Gen 2 is a perfection of the first game. It felt like Gen 1 is something that wasn't quite finished as the developers had to suffer to get it out. With this game practically being a guaranteed success, we have so many improvements that I can get back to this game way easier. Even the back is way better, you have no idea. We can now carry more items, key items are at a part of the limit, and we have different sections, it's great. I love the Johto region, especially when remade. You can see the more Japanese aesthetic in the buildings and there are a lot more interesting places to visit, making me feel like this region was a lot more inspired. Even with remakes, I personally found Kanto to be a little bland. Johto is just a more interesting region to travel through. If I were to recommend the remake far over the original for any reason, is how much more they added visually. It really makes this experience feel like you're traveling through not Japan. Its soundtrack is superb as well, if only there were a way to quickly make you listen to most of them, but that would just take too long. Some of the new Pokemon designs are great. Scizor is so fucking cool. Tyranitar is badass, perfect villain Pokemon too. It's a large game you can put a lot of time in, however the main games aren't all there is to this franchise. We have the spin-offs. Since both Gen 1 and Gen 2 have similar and smaller scale spin-offs, I kind of want to include them together. I have shown and mentioned Pokemon Stadium. The real first game only came out in Japan. However, they wanted to include all Pokemon. Most likely, Pokemon became popular in America at a later date, figuring they were already working on the second game, might as well wait to release the second game to the West and call it the first game. I thought so, but then I see it released at the same time as Gen 2, making me wonder what the point of the second game is. The first Japanese game didn't have all the Pokemon, only the ones you're likely to use in battle. This second game fixes that, but with Gen 2 being right there, why not just wait a bit and work on a Gen 2 Stadium game instead? Perhaps development started way earlier and didn't go so smoothly? I digress, we have the second game and called it the first game. The point of this game is to bring Poke Battles to 3D, and nothing else. There is no story, no plot, no world to explore, it is basically a battling simulator. The intention probably being to invite a friend over and challenge them in 3D. It does have a single player mode. You can freely face an NPC, or you can do one of the cups. Each cup has different rule sets based on competitive play. Each cup is based on level and evolutionary stage. I personally went for the level 100 cup. One thing that bothers me is that your Pokemon you're using doesn't just get scaled down or up to the right level like they would in later games, especially the future main games. This can be quite annoying as the game wants you to complete all cups. As for the Pokemon, you can choose between 151 rental Pokemon, but the higher the evolutionary stage, the shittier their moveset, making them sometimes completely useless. For this we have a transfer pack. You transfer the Pokemon from your Gen 1 games over to Stadium. Alas, if you don't have such a pack, immediately a large portion of enjoying this game gets thrown into the wayside. Now on emulator it is possible to set this up. So here I have my totally competitive team. You will face trainer after trainer, battle after battle, some annoying strategies, fucking bind! Shout out to this guy with Mew in Stadium 2 by the way, there's a bunch of different moves to make sure winning is luck based. Aside from the cops, there is the gym leader tower. You face gym after gym, each have 3 trainers and a gym leader to face. Their teams aren't like that of the games or anime. In here trainers are Interesting. What is a rocket grunt doing in your gym? And how the hell did he get a Moltres? Aside from the cheating, the gym leaders aren't too difficult, but afterwards you have to face the Elite Four, in which Lance is somehow easier because he doesn't have a Dragon Knight. Why does he have a Dragonair? He knows that he normally gets his cock socked 3 times an hour for every Dragon Knight, right? He should have 3 fucking Dragon Knights, because he knows bitches love Dragon Knights. Why does the Dragon Tamer have a Lapras? At the end, you face Gary again, but his team is somehow even easier than in the original game. And easier than any other opponent. I mean, he doesn't even use a legendary. I guess I can respect him for not cheating though. Honestly, I cannot be bothered to do all cups, especially since I have nothing prepared for the level 50s. After you do all of them, you can face off against Mewtwo. That's your prize. Was it worth it? Nah, not really. The problem with Stadium is how tiring it can get to fight over and over again, with practically nothing in between. It can be quite exhausting, especially after you face the oh so many trainers that would like you to leave things to luck with all of their strategies, and my luck is special. There are minigames, but in the first game these were not fun. A lot of them were boring, others were too simple, and some I don't understand. I am pressing every button and nothing is fucking happening. Is the second game any better? Well, with more Pokemon and items comes more variety. However, it's even worse in single player, as now Pokemon don't even change much between different levels of cups. At this point I'd wish they let us choose to do the final one immediately, so we can get this over with. I was so close to doing everything in Stadium too, but there is this leak where you use random teams of Pokemon that are all bad rental Pokemon without items, and you're expected to beat competitive teams with good movesets and items. And on top of that, a bunch of them use cheap strats, like double team spam or confusion flinch, and after the 50th time I was fucking done. I have no luck and this whole game has practically become luck based. The minigames are better at least. I have spent quite a good amount of time just playing those, and at least it's a good distraction from this bullshit. At the end of the day, the problem remains the same. I don't think it would have been as bad if it was just a gym leader castle you have to beat to get to the end of the game, but it wanting you to do everything can make this game quite tiring. Of course, it would be better if future games had an actual RPG behind it, whilst having these modes as a post game. Now, some may also feel 3D is slow because they have to actively animate everything. It honestly doesn't bother me too much, and if I were to compare them to their original games, I don't think it is all the animation's fault, but more so how they are directed. They often have to take them cutting from one animation to another animation, making it feel longer. On the other hand, this may add more weight to the fight, seeing your Pokemon hurt doing their best. But that is highly subjective. I'd say play Stadium to relax while sitting on the couch. Don't seriously play this for hours, it will get tiring. Still fun to play when you have a friend over with their own game. There was Hey You Pikachu, basically a pet simulator, but it was a Pikachu. I have never experienced this game, but no one really seems to like it, so let's just move on to something more important. Pokemon Snap. Pokemon Snap appears to be a cult classic. If you've never played it like me, you may not really get the hype, but if you did play it as a child, you might swear this game is a 10 out of 10. You go around on wheels and shoot photos of Pokemon, those photos being rated by the professor. Though he seems not to care for my artistic photography or how good the picture actually looks, all he cares about is how specific Pokemon appear in the photograph. I tried it for a bit, but I didn't quite understand how to really play this game. I got some nice pictures, I guess. This is partially my fault. The game probably should be played on original hardware or graphics. I think graphics are kind of important in this game, it being based off photography. It would be better if everything appeared better looking, and the Nintendo 64 doesn't really do it for me. Luckily, some god had listened, and a new Snap game was made for the Switch. I haven't played it yet, but I am interested. From what I have seen, it is a game that is a lot clearer on what it wants you to do. You can easily save your pictures on the Switch, and a lot more will happen over time, making it not feel as repetitive. Now you can photograph the wonders of Pokemon on the go! Well, those were all the N64 games that I could have talked about, except Puzzle League. So, Puzzle League is, well, just simply a puzzle game. I have played it a little bit. Both that one and Puzzle League Challenge, which I would say the N64 game didn't really draw me in as much. It's just a puzzle game, you know, it is pretty fun. I could say I feel a little bit nostalgic of hearing the English opening song for Pokemon while playing a puzzle game. I'm pretty curious about the animation that plays in the beginning, because this is an American and Europe only game. which kind of surprised me as well. I'm starting to wonder, like, was the animation from an episode of the anime that they just used and voiced over, or like, was that the original animation? Which in that case, I'm very impressed it's only for the American and European audiences. Really wonder what the development is all about, because I tried to research it a little bit, but I didn't really see anything why they made this game only for Americans, and then they make Puzzle League Challenge for both Japanese audiences and European and American audiences. I would say I did enjoy Puzzle League Challenge quite a bit more. I just felt the 2D sprites were a little bit more charming, and I really loved the remixes of all the Gen 2 town themes a lot. I thought it was very cute, actually, and I thought it was, I could definitely, I do remember as a kid I played this game quite a bit, actually. It's pretty addicting, actually, too. The next Game Boy game I played was the Pokemon Pinball game, which I would say is just pinball, but I only played a little bit of it to get some footage. And it is kind of like the other Pokemon Pinball game I played on the Game Boy Advance, which I would probably talk about a lot more in depth, because that's more what I'm interested in. But this game seems kind of similar, and the interesting about this game is that you win this pinball game by catching Pokemon. And I assume you have to catch all of the Pokemon to get to the final boss. Because yes, there are boss fights in this one, and they're basically all about catching those specific boss Pokemon. It is interesting, but it seems also kind of like a huge time sink, which I don't really have time for, unfortunately. I'll probably spend a little bit more time on the Gen 3 pinball game, but even then I probably would cheat to get to like the end, because now between everything, of course, was the good old trading card game. I would say most people don't actually play the game, but there are actual tournaments regarding the card game. Yet for the longest time, no one really talks about playing it. There was, however, a video game on the Game Boy Color in 1998. So yes, a Gen 1 game. To learn again how to play the game, because I couldn't read English when I was into collecting Pokemon cards, I finally tried to understand the game, and gave up after half an hour. It's not too complicated per se. You have one active Pokemon and can place up to 5 Pokemon in the back. You can attach one elemental energy to one Pokemon at a time, evolve one Pokemon at a time. You can't attack at the first turn. You win either by defeating all Pokemon on the opponent's field, or more likely, by getting all the prize cards, up to 6 of them. You get one for each Pokemon card you beat. Why did I give up? The game with its age is already pretty slow paced. But the game itself is also very slow and requires an immense amount of luck to get anywhere. I just started, picked a Charmander deck and figured to fight some rando at the Grass Club. What do I experience? A Lickitung with a lot of HP, paralyzing me to the point I had no hope of winning, as she was already able to evolve her Bulba into a Venusaur. I even had a Zapdos card? What? This game's plot revolves around you obtaining the 7 legendary Pokemon cards. But, I already have this. What could those cards even be? Either way, with the limited energy placement, I got screwed over as I could not attack the Venusaur, and it just does 60 damage every time. With how slow the game already is, and thinking I'd have to do it over every time, over a stroke of bad luck. With my shit luck, I quit immediately. Perhaps there will be a time I spend more on the card game itself, but not for a while. They never released a game for newer gens, which I found quite odd. Well, not until a recent mobile release, which I might check out in the future, but not at this moment. No, the love for Pokemon cards was just simply collecting them and trading them with friends. I know many have entire folders of Pokemon cards in the order of the Pokédex. Some even traded rare Pokemon cards for a $50 game. No joke. I could get Pokemon cards for incredible cheap prices when it was Queen's Day in the Netherlands. Back when it was called that anyway. The whole country becomes a flea market and you could get a bunch of Pokemon cards for cheap. But nowadays Pokemon cards can be sold for tons of cash. Yes, even 20 years later, these cards are still everywhere. There was also a Pokemon Master Trainer board game. I had this a little bit later as a child, alas, with not many family members being interested and this also being in English as far as I remember, I didn't know the rules and just made shit up if I were to play it with someone. The game starts with each player picking one of 6 starter Pokemon. Every Pokemon is divided into 5 classes from strong to weak, signified by the color of their cardboard. Players can find and catch Pokemon in certain areas, and between each turn a card can be drawn that are items or even cards that let players obtain Pokemon, or use an HM move. Or maybe you can trade with another player. Every Pokemon has a power point, and to win the game, one has to get to Cinnabar Island with 20 power points to defeat Gary. Beat him, and you win the game. Lose, and you have to start all over from the beginning. In Pallet Town, with a starter. All over again. Wow, that is quite a severe punishment. There was also a Johto version, but Bulbapedia has barely any information written on it. It was a very rare and obscure game, so I suppose I can't really find much info about it. Of course, Pokemon branched out to other media. We already talked about the movie, but there was of course the anime. Alas, I lacked the time to research it, and even if I did, I would probably stick to only the interesting episodes, because the anime is pretty long. I was thinking of doing all generations. Now imagine if I had to watch over 100 episodes for each season. I'd have to write a review of the whole thing, which I wasn't planning on, since I wanted to focus more on the gaming side to begin with. I am sticking to memory here. The Pokemon anime is quite an oddity, kind of a product of its time in that regard, in terms of humor and atmosphere, but not in a bad way at all. It is hard to talk about because I of course grew up with the 4Kids version, or rather a dub of the 4Kids version. So a Dutch dub of an English dub of a Japanese show that is heavily localized and often censored. Some episodes were straight up banned, like the James turning into Big Tit Lady. That was something that happened, yes. The gun episodes, instead of censoring the gun like in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the 4Kids skipped the episode of Ash catching 30 towers, leaving the viewers confused on where he got all of these fucking balls, holy shit. And then there was an episode that's also banned in Japan itself. It was basically an episode where Pikachu did a discharge on top of Polygon. And the flashes caused children to be sick, to get seizures. This is a bit funny, right? So Polygon was blamed for the incident. Because, you know, it just so happened that he was, that he debuted in that episode. So there was never a Polygon again in the anime. When technically it was Pikachu's fault to begin with. On the other hand, you could also think, well, I mean, it's not the Pokemon's fault, it's the animator's fault for animating all those flashes. They could also just not animate those flashes anymore. No, that's not the thing they thought about, apparently, I guess. Fair enough. The Pokemon anime can be pretty goofy. The episode of a bunch of Clefairies making a spaceship to go to the moon or some shit comes to mind. Or the giant tentacle Godzilla monster. The Clefairy one is burnt in my mind with my limited selection of DVDs, so I watched this episode too many times. The thing with the Pokemon anime is it mostly advertises the Pokemon themselves, which can lead to episodes that are something, I guess, entertaining for kids or maybe even some adults, but not much of note to talk about. However, at the same time, it has episodes that can be pretty effective story-wise, like the Abandoned Charmander. Following a traditional Japanese story of a loyal pet waiting for its master, in this case, the Charmander was told to wait on this rock no matter what, even when it rained, risking its life, for when its tail flame is put out, it dies. Ash meets the asshole trainer who abandoned it and even brags about it. After helping Charmander survive the rain, it in turn helped them out and showed its strength, making his trainer want him again, but it instead sides with Ash and burns his old trainer. There are a few episodes in later seasons that repeat this kind of story, but that may also be because it just kind of works. Alas, I like the time to talk about the anime itself, and I might in future videos dedicate a bit more time towards it, but right now I don't really have the time. I still have some movies to talk about as well. In 2000, the second Pokemon movie was made, but was at first only half as successful as the first, likely due to the Poké craze dying down a little bit. Though the movie itself was also pretty average, to be honest. The plot boils down to some guy wants to risk the end of the world for an exotic bird collection. Ash has to collect 3 treasures to calm the angry birds after they had been freed from their capture of the collector, who really didn't care when they got free. Ash gets help from the exotic bird who the collector really wanted, but the collector gets exploded by Lugia instead. Ash, for some reason, tries to get to the last island with a sleigh, despite having a fucking flying dragon. Ash also gets the aggro of the 3 birds fighting each other now that he is in the boss arena. But don't worry, the birds soon remember that they are angry at each other. With the 3 treasures and the island's festival girl's flute, they stop the birds from being angry, instantly restoring the ocean currents and restoring nature. Also, the collector is fine. never stopped smiling. I think the movie's animation has enough style and looked pretty nice, but the story didn't really make much sense. The main villain is the weakest part. He has no past. His motives are nonsensical, and you can kind of cut him out of the movie without losing much. The third movie actually had an idea behind it, the theme being about loneliness and loss of parents. The girl's mom was implied to have passed away, except she didn't, but we'll get to that. Her dad was a researcher looking for Unknown, a strange Pokemon that decided to put the father in the what the fuck dimension. The girl, now alone and sad, accidentally set a formation of unknown pieces and summoned the Unknown. These Pokemon can feel her feelings and did as her heart desires, except for bring her dad back from the what the fuck dimension for some reason. Creating an Entei that she sees as her dad and creating this palace, Entei also kidnaps Ash's mom and turned her into Mii's mom. Ash and co infiltrate the Chrome Palace and have to not only save Ash's mom, but in the end make Mii wake up to the fact that neither Entei nor Ash's mom are her parents, with Entei not even realizing he is an illusion. In the end, Mii has to accept reality and also understand she doesn't have to be lonely and still can make friends like the people in front of her have. Together with Entei, they blast the Unknown, causing them to return to their homes and instantly fix the problem. Also, her dad finally exits the what the fuck dimension and her mom is alive? Wait. So, here's the weird part. Some rumors state that the writer was pretty sick during the making of this movie, which might have caused some miscommunication with the overall team. But there may also have been higher-up meddling. According to rumors, the higher-ups made Team Rocket a comedic group instead of the serious villains. In this case, the higher-ups demanded the girl's mom being alive. Her mom was apparently just sick and in the hospital. The problem is, that means they could have easily taken the girl to the hospital to see her mom instead, destroying the whole point of the movie. Aside from this miss, I do think the movie is one of the better Pokemon movies, and the animation might be the best of them so far. Alas, I can't show much due to copyright. Pokemon Forever is about a baby onion getting hunted by a Pokemon hunter. He gets help from some child and he sends himself and the child 40 years into the future. Ash and friends help him and learn he is from the past. They help Onion Baby, who is scared of humans because of the hunter. Even though the Pokemon hurt him more actually, but who cares about details? A Team Rocket executive decides to hunt Celebi now using evil Pokemon, created by the evil balls, that strengthen the Pokemon, allegedly, because this Scizor got his ass kicked by a Bayleaf of all things. Ash and friends escape Fish's mask, yes that is his name, and heal Celebi with the lake it was born out of. They spend a night, Mask Guy captures Celebi and turns it into a CGI monstrosity. There is some aspect where the ugly CGI works because it makes the moment uglier, but I wonder if that is intentional. Suicune helps Ash and friends get to Celebi, calm it down with Talk no Jutsu. Alas, Celebi had used all of its power and the lake got destroyed using Celebi's power, so it became a mummy. Suicune cleans the lake and it still isn't enough, so Celebi's from future past come and restore Celebi. But Mask Guy captures him, only to get thunderbolted and surrounded by the forest's angry Pokemon. This was a movie. Also, the end is implied that the boy was actually Professor Oak the entire time, but this gets never brought up and I guess it's just kind of ignored forever. It may have been more fine if the animation were better. It is weird to hear that the creators thought this movie was their best animation yet, but I found the actual movement and even art style to be not much better than the TV anime, unlike the other three movies. Never mind the pretty badly aged CGI. I don't understand why not just have the lake be what restores Celebi, and have the crying scene before Suicune purifies the water. The sullen Celebis make less sense in comparison. Some might say there wasn't enough time to connect with the characters to care about the emotional moment, but I wonder, since I watched this movie when I was really young, time also moved very slowly for me, so for me it felt like plenty of time to care about the characters. But it does feel different as an adult, where 1 hour isn't always quite a lot. But this movie is made for children after all, so that criticism is very difficult to validate in my eyes. I think if the animation were better I'd like it more than the second movie, but it becomes kind of clear that as movies go on, most of them are there to advertise legendary Pokemon rather than tell a solid story. Surely they can be entertaining to children and Pokemon fans, but I wouldn't bother looking at them critically, for they are made for the pure reason of entertaining existing fans. The movies are fan service, basically, and I think as long as the animation is good, that's fine. But I do kind of dislike it when everything gets fixed by what feels like magic. I suppose it is harder to believe compared to when such things happen in games, because I feel like I experience whatever happens in games, whereas here I am seeing everything secondhand in a matter of speaking, and I notice more how some things just kind of exist without explanation. The only other thing is the Pokemon manga, which I personally have little interest in. It's been covered by plenty, especially with how bizarre it is. It can get dark, due to Pokemon dying and also zombies. And then you have interesting panels. The story also sounds kind of nuts. What is this about Pokemon fusing in the Red and Blue arc? Yellow gets a separate arc where Lance takes over the lead for and tries to commit genocide? What the fuck? Gold and Silver was normal at first, but now Price is the leader of Neo Team Rocket and Iced Mask was behind the kidnapping of Green and Silver, huh? The story sounds kind of nuts, but it is popular enough to continue with every game under the same title of Pokemon Adventures. I assume it does have a healthy follower base, with even winning some awards. And that was it for the first 2 generations of Pokemon. While only being a moderate success at first, it has quickly grown into an empire of a media franchise, eventually becoming the world's biggest franchise. Let's not think about the quality of future games. Let's just talk. Don't mention it. Don't talk. The first generation was where everything began, and while it has its flaws, it was also clearly made under a lot of pressure. Many years went by as these developers had to make an RPG, which is already pretty complex in code, with little pay and probably just a lot of work time in general. The games improved immensely, and alongside these games are a bunch of other extra things that anyone can enjoy to some extent. From board games to anime to movies to manga to spin-off games. Pokemon is a franchise that is meant to stay, and despite the fact that they wanted Gold and Silver to be the ultimate Pokemon games, they didn't really plan to have more Pokemon games. With it now being one of the biggest franchises in the world, why would Gamefreak stop now? Although I think Gen 2 is a pretty special time for Pokemon. At that time Gen 2 was out, the only thing I really got out of Gen 2 when it was out was the anime. So I didn't really get much out of the game at first. I tried a little bit of Gen 2 when I couldn't read English, and at some point I finally actually beat a Gen 2 game when the remakes came out. Now for my first Pokemon journey, it would have to be the next generation we're gonna look at. With new hardware comes new qualities. On top of that there are much more spin-offs to look at, yes. We will advance to the next generation. And this video, I started on this video 3 years ago and edited like 19 minutes and I came back this year to edit the rest. And the portion after Pokemon Snap is made up, by the way. Like, that was just, I quickly after made it on the spot. I was gonna take a break and come back later, but no, then the Pokemon Presents was today. So, so I was like, oh fuck, I have to watch it now. Otherwise I might have added a little bit more funny things in the last portion of the video, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. I also wanted to talk a lot more about the anime, but I figured, you know, I don't think I'm gonna talk a lot about the anime in Generation 3 and 4 videos, so, you know, maybe I'll just save it up for later. I hope you guys could enjoy this somewhat scuffed first video. And I am very excited for the next video, that would be Generation 3. Or at least I think so, because I've got some other games I want to look at as well. I was, for example, also thinking of doing a Hitman video. But perhaps you guys want to see a specific franchise yourself. If you want to see a video game franchise being covered like this, in this style, do comment below. Farewell.